The movie begins with a family of nobles riding through the woods and suddenly getting stuck. One of the children emerges from the carriage and sings as he urinates, and his father tells him to be careful. He attends to the other children and says there aren't any monsters, but suddenly gets killed by a large vine. The vine attacks the children and kills them, but the boy escapes and enters the woods. A witcher named Vesemir emerges and fights the monster called a Leshen. He kills the monster and is shocked as he hears it speak. The young boy Sugo meets a woman named Tetra Gilcrest who assures him that his family will receive a proper burial. Tetra meets King Dagreed and submits a petition to invade Kaer Morhen, the home of the Witchers, and exile them for crimes against the kingdom. Lady Zerbst objects and says Vesemir killed the Leshen and the Witchers don't pose a threat. King Dagreed sides with Zerbst because Tetra has no evidence and they leave the Witchers. Meanwhile, Vesemir sits in a bathtub and drinks wine as Filivandril, an elf, tells him that the Leshen he killed spoke an ancient elf language that only a few could speak. He translates it to, quote, "Beware the den of my dead," and Vesemir says he sensed a presence in the woods. Filivandril talks about strange disappearances and says an elf named Kitsu was kidnapped. He says she spoke the ancient language and asks Vesemir to accompany him in the woods, but Vesemir refuses. Filivandril leaves in annoyance and Vesemir stares at a cake on the table. He reminisces on the past when he was a servant to a noble family. Vesemir's father instructs him to get a wet cloth while he and the nobleman restrain his wife. His father instructs him to go to the market to purchase some herbs, and Vesemir sees Ilyana outside. He talks about going on adventures, and Ilyana says she'd love to own a lake house where she can be at peace with whoever she marries. Vesemir says they should use the money for herbs to buy a cake, and he gets a mischievous idea. A store owner pursues Vesemir as he steals some fruits, and everyone gets distracted. Ilyana uses the opportunity to steal the herbs, and Vesemir returns the fruits and buys a cake. The duo sit in an alley as they eat the cake, and a witcher named Deglin emerges. He instructs them to take him to the nobleman's wife, and they reluctantly take him. He tells the nobleman he will remove the demon from his wife and allows Vesemir to witness it. Deglin instructs Vesemir to catch the demon, and he uses a spell to force it out of the noblewoman's mouth. Vesemir hesitates to kill the demon, and it takes Ilyana's form. Deglin kills it and tells him never to let a demon get in his head. Vesemir follows Deglin and sees the gold he received as payment. He says he's interested in becoming a witcher, but hesitates as Deglin asks about Ilyana, and Deglin says witchers never hesitate. Vesemir talks to Ilyana about becoming a witcher to make enough money to afford whatever she wants. Ilyana doesn't support his idea, but Vesemir puts cake under her bed that night and leaves. He embarks on a long journey and eventually arrives at Kaer Morhen. In the present, Vesemir enters Kaer Morhen and meets Luca and Sven, his friends who are also witchers. Inside, Vesemir talks to Deglin, and Deglin says he will teach the recruits. They talk about the Leshen, and Vesemir stands by his suspicions and says it was being controlled. Deglin stares at the fire and says a few new beasts will benefit their business. Some townspeople find several dead bodies in a town and suspect a basilisk killed them. Tetra examines the bodies and goes to Lady Zerbst's house, where she suspects the Witchers were involved. Zerbst reminds her that Witchers must hand over the monster's body before getting paid. Meanwhile, Vesemir instructs some children as they train, and he remembers his days as a student. He tells a boy that everything will be alright, and they go to bed. Vesemir wakes up in the middle of a swamp and is shocked. Sven says they're in the red swamp, and Vesemir suggests they stick together and follow the moon. Their medallions suddenly begin to shimmer, and it signifies that there is a monster close by. Several monsters emerge from the water, attacking and killing several kids as they try to escape. Vesemir runs as some monsters pursue him and fall off a cliff. He wakes up in the infirmary and feels the pain from his injuries. He cries as he stares at a medallion, but it begins to shimmer and he follows it. He enters a strange room with several beasts, and a mage named Riedrich emerges. Vesemir is startled by an apprehended monster, and Riedrich talks about crossbreeding monsters. Deglin emerges and Vesemir asks if he knew they'd die in the red swamp. Deglin tells him he has a letter from someone, and he reads it. Ilyana tells Vesemir that his father is dead, and Vesemir undergoes the Witcher mutation. He survives the mutation with a few others, and in the present he becomes a powerful witcher who makes a lot of money from killing monsters. He sits with the other witchers as some children undergo the mutation, and he and Luca decide to go to a bar. In the bar, a knight insults them for being witchers and attempts to attack them. Tetra talks to the king and says the witchers should be killed because they killed the knights. Lady Zerbst informs the king that the knights instigated the fight, and the witchers were defending themselves. She says going to war with the witchers will cause a lot of bloodshed and has a suggestion to bring peace. Vesemir sits in a cell and a guard takes him to a different room. He sees a cake on the table and Zerbst emerges and reveals herself as Ilyana. Vesemir realizes he ages slower than a normal human because he's a witcher. She tells him about her late husband and children, and says the king will pardon him and Luca if he kills the monster in the woods. Vesemir agrees to kill the monster and Ilyana says he'll go with a chaperone. Tetra gets on her horse as she and Vesemir prepare to leave, and Vesemir assures Ilyana he will kill the monster. The duo rides into the woods as Vesemir tells Tetra that being a witcher is a business. They make camp that night and Tetra tells him a story of a witcher swindling a priest. An innocent woman was killed because of the witcher's scam, and Tetra says a witcher's connection to chaos is corrupted. They continue their journey the following day and realize they are going in circles. Tetra senses they are in an illusion and uses her magic to repel it. They see the mutated elf named Kitsu sitting on a tower, and she summons a mutated basilisk. A fight ensues and Tetra traps the basilisk in ice while Vesemir burns it to death. Kitsu rushes to the dead basilisk and begins to cry. An avalanche suddenly begins and Kitsu tries to escape, but Vesemir uses a dagger to injure her. The avalanche clears and they realize it is an illusion. Vesemir smells the blood on his dagger and says Kitsu smells like a mar. The duo enter the elven school and find the corpses of several elves. They hear a voice inside the building and Vesemir realizes it's Filavandrel. He realizes his comrade and Filavandrel says Kitsu tried experimenting on him. They realize her DNA was spliced using mutagenic alchemy that is known only to the mages at Kaer Morhen. They then accuse Vesemir and the Witchers of creating monsters so they can remain in business, and Vesemir says he has nothing to do with it. Tetra sees a mutated elf and tries to kill it, but he takes the elf to the Elven Kingdom, and Vesemir reminds Tetra that her people caused the Elven genocide. Tetra stands on a cliff and uses her magic to create an avalanche and destroys the Elven school. Vesemir talks to Ilyana and she says she knows what he has to do. Kitsu returns to her destroyed lair and Tetra says Vesemir destroyed it. In the palace, the knights hold Luca as the king accuses him of being involved in making new monsters, and Luca doesn't know what he is talking about. Ilyana tries to stop the king, but he ignores her, and a knight decapitates Luke. Vesemir enters the room in Kaer Morhen and sees several monsters created. Deglin enters and says the monsters will help them make more money. He then says humans are afraid of witchers and will come after them if they don't have any monsters left to kill. Vesemir tells Deglin to burn everything and a fight ensues. Riedrich separates them and Ilyana informs them that Tetra is approaching. They stand on the balcony and see as Tetra has gathered several townspeople to stand against the witchers. Ilyana informs Vesemir that Luca was executed and he blames Deglin and Riedrich for his death. Riedrich informs them that he and the other mages are the only ones who know about mutagenic alchemy and says there won't be any more witchers if the mages are killed. He and Deglin prepare for battle and Vesemir tells Ilian to escape. She says she will stay to protect the children and Vesemir kisses her. Deglin and Vesemir ride to Tetra and Vesemir tells her they don't have to fight. He assures her they won't make any more mutated monsters and gives her his word. But Deglin refuses and calls her a witch. He says they are an army of witchers and only humans accompany her. Tetra and her students open several portals to the Red Swamp and Kitsu sends monsters through the portals. The Withers fight the hordes of monsters and humans and are outnumbered. Tetra enters the castle to kill the mages, but Vesemir and Deglin rush to her. A giant monster grabs Vesemir as it flies into the air. Deglin sees several witchers, including Sven, killed in battle. Vesemir kills the giant monster and crashes into the building, causing a distraction that allows Deglin to kill the men surrounding him. Deglin instructs Vesemir to find Riedrich and the others as he continues fighting. Ilian stays with the children and a young boy tells her there is a secret passage. She instructs them to follow it and escape, and walks to a room where Tetra holds the mages captive. She begs Tetra to stop what she's doing, but Tetra says she's betrayed them. A knight points his sword at Ilyana, but Vesemir emerges from the roof. He prepares to attack them, but Kitsu emerges, putting him in an illusion. Vesemir sees several illusions, but says they aren't real. He suddenly sees that he's married to Ilyana, and she paints a portrait of him. He realizes she isn't real and breaks the illusion. Vesemir kills the knights before they can kill Ilyana, and a fight ensues. He dodges Tetra's arrows and eventually beheads her. His surroundings change, and Vesemir realizes he beheaded Riedrich and stabbed Ilyana. Tetra hits him with arrows and says her mother's the innocent woman killed by a witcher from the story she told him in the woods. She prepares to kill him and wipe out the witchers as revenge, but Deglin throws an axe at her, killing her. Vesemir holds Ilyana and she says the children escaped. Deglin asks Vesemir to train the children and make them better men, and he dies. Vesemir carries Ilyana and she asks him not to kill Kitsu. They go on a horse and ride away as the building burns. Vesemir takes Ilyana to a frozen lake and uses his magic to melt the ice. He sits beside her as she stares at the lake, which she calls beautiful. Ilyana dies peacefully and Vesemir cries as she leans on him. Meanwhile, the children continue moving and Vesemir meets them. He drops a bag of bloody medallions and asks them to decide whether to be witchers. The young boy named Geralt says that people hate him, and Vesemir says there are still monsters left to kill. Geralt then picks up a medallion and stares at it. The end. Thank you so much for watching. Please check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap that bell icon to be notified about our latest videos. We'll see you next time.